Welcome back to News from the Heart. I'm Heather George, and I have the amazing honor to sit with my guru, Swami Chetanananda, and talk to him about various topics about what's going on in the world, things that you all let us know you're interested in talking about, and things going on not only in our community but beyond. Something that I noticed, I always notice around here, but we're very fortunate to have Sujit Chatterjee, who is one of the foremost homeopaths in the world, come to see us, to teach our community, to teach homeopaths from all over the country, and to offer many people private sessions. I'm doing a doctoral degree in Chinese medicine. We have naturopaths, osteopaths, MDs,
psychiatrists,
every type of healing practitioner that exists in the world. And we're a spiritual community. So talking about how health and spiritual practice play into each other, the priorities of taking care of our health, how people navigate all these different modalities.
When we started the community in 1971 in Bloomington, Indiana, and to some degree we still do, we attracted, whoever heard of yoga and meditation? Well, for the most part, only people who were smoking dope and doing LSD. We got a lot of people who were confused about a lot of things, and many of whom had health issues because they had not taken care of themselves. And the immediate recognition was that before you can really practice, and before you can have the energy to work, to do spiritual work, and have deep insights, you have to have your health. And so, our initial response to that was, and I think still a very important response, is asana practice, doing yoga. And one of the bases of our community was doing yoga as early as, we started in 1971. But in 1973, I met Roland Becker, who came from a family that was central to the emergence of osteopathy in the United States after the Civil War and through the first half of the 20th century. And Roland was the assistant to the person who developed cranial osteopathy, which has been popularized in the form of cranial sacral work. There was a lot of resentment on the part of the early osteopaths because chiropractics was basically stolen from osteopathy by a first-year osteopathic medical student who then went to Montana and changed the name of the least sophisticated part of osteopathy, which was all he learned, high-velocity manipulation, and he called it chiropractics. So even to this day, osteopaths will not teach chiropractors or physical therapists cranial osteopathy. And because of that, there was an opportunity for Mr. Upledger, a cranial osteopath from Lansing, Michigan, who claims he discovered cranial sacral work. What he did was he plagiarized Sutherland and Becker's work and sold it to chiropractors, physical therapists, massage therapists, and created the field of cranial sacral work. And one of the main differences, one of the first immediate differences, is that cranial osteopaths have an astonishing level of familiarity with anatomy and physiological process that is not required, even remotely required, of cranial sacral therapists. But anyway, I met Dr. Becker, I became friends with Dr. Becker. Ultimately, I'm the only non-medical, non-osteopathic person he ever trained. And his work profoundly influenced me. His work influenced me because it helped me to understand how the energy that that awakened in me in the relationship with my teacher, the Kundalini energy I received in the form of what's called Shaktipat, was a refinement, was the next level up in the creative expression of the whole universe that manifests in the form of a human being. So what I'm saying is that the body is creative energy, the mind is creative energy, the spirit is creative energy, and while there are different density to each of those expressions, they are one. The next thing I'm saying is that health is health. Where is health? What is health and where is health? Health is within us, and it is expressed as range of motion in the tissues. It's expressed as physiological process. Range of motion in physiological process. So, fine. I understood that our physiological health and our spiritual development are totally integrated. And Dr. Becker basically showed me a way to help people access their health resources, which are within themselves, in a moment when they were in some kind of crisis. And that's what osteopathy is about. Well, that's also what Chinese medicine is about. And while their approaches are different, the framework that they are working in, the circulation of the breath of life in 3 phases, through channels and junctions, is no different.
Can an MD also combine these different?
Well, if they're trained, but essentially you have to understand that allopathic medicine denies the existence of any kind of energy, that
so does that include
underlies
naturopathic medicine?
the physiological existence of human beings.
Okay.
I think in terms of naturopathic medicine, I think naturopathic doctors embrace what's called vitalism, energetic medicine. Allopathic doctors adamantly deny it.
And that's the missing link. If they could not deny that, we could also use biomedicine as a modality.
If they could not deny that, then we would not be in the total shithole that we're in relationship to our healthcare system. What we have done here is essentially developed our own healthcare system. It's a healthcare system based on yoga, diet, meditation, osteopathy, homeopathy, and classical Chinese medicine as opposed to traditional Chinese medicine. We have made the judgment that classical Chinese medicine is a superior perspective.
Long story short, the medicine practice that was used for thousands of years in China until General Mao edited the medical system and created traditional Chinese medicine.
Well, he edited the medical system by killing 99% of the practitioners. Then what they did was, after they killed off 99% of the practitioners, they went, oh shit, we don't have a healthcare system anymore. So then they sent a bunch of people to the old books and tried to create out of the old books, the traditional Chinese medical system. But the thing about the old books is, the old guys who wrote them, being not so stupid, and in the business of protecting their own asses, did not write everything down. And sometimes they wrote things down that weren't exactly right.
Or they wrote in a very cryptic way, so only very serious.
So the difference now is that traditional Chinese medicine was then exported by the communist government in China to the rest of the world as part of their propaganda apparatus. You know, to begin to interest people in China and convince people that China is not so bad. At a time when, you know, it was more of a Cold War.
I mean,
classical Chinese medicine has emerged from contact by Western people, you know, with the few true remaining people who are holders of the classical systems that were prevalent in China before the Communist Revolution. And, you know, Jeffrey Ewan is one of those people whose family, he's Chinese, but his family were Southern Chinese Taoists who were healers for about 90 generations. And, you know, Heiner Fruhoff is a guy who set up the program here in Portland at the Naturopathic College, and he basically went to China and to Tibet and found remote people who were in hiding from the government who had, you know, classical ancient knowledge and who helped him, guided him in his study of various ancient texts. There are a number of Western people who really tried hard to do a good job, and some of them have. So, for the most part, our work here is based on, you know, systems in Chinese medicine other than TCM. We're not really big TCM gunners. We have other approaches. And the point of it being that the medicines of the allopathic community are never completely beneficial. Never. Sometimes they are almost completely not beneficial. Particularly, I am suspicious of all of the antidepressant, antipsychotic medications. I've seen a number of works recently that question the whole theory around the whole basis of the chemistry of those meds. We know that the largest class of medicines that are prescribed for Americans in the United States, statin drugs, do nothing at all, and yet they are still being prescribed.
They do something, they do harm.
So they do nothing positive.
Okay.
We know that even antibiotics, which are often really helpful, come at a big expense to our system, because, you know, the antibiotics don't just kill off the out of balance bacterial system in our body. They kill off all the bacteria in our bodies, and much of which is very important to our physiological function. So, you know, essentially what we've done is, you know, said we're done with allopathic medicine. We don't want any part of it. It's too expensive. It is too limited. You know, unfortunately today, like psychiatrists today are essentially vending machines. You know, you go into a psychiatrist, you know, they want to make a diagnosis that fits one of their boxes. And as soon as they have made a diagnosis that fits the box you're in, that releases all the medications that are appropriate to the particular box. And there is no real interest they have no real interest in understanding the depth or basis of any issue that anybody is facing.
Well, and what you're saying just now and what you said earlier when I asked you if MDs, because we have some MDs in our community that are effective healers, but the difference...
All the MDs in our communities have become osteopaths and homeopaths.
The difference is that they've broadened their scope of practice to include the energetic, the spiritual, and in Chinese medicine specifically, one of the major differences between the classical approach and the more contemporary traditional approach is the word Shen.
Right.
which was literally removed from the medical practice, and it was the foundation, and Shen is loosely translated as spirit. You have to assess the person's energetic health to
Right.
help treat their physical health. So
Right. And as you're doing that, what you are doing is actually making real and personal direct contact with the person.
yeah.
And this is something completely missing in our modern healthcare systems.
Swamiji, why have you not mentioned Ayurveda when we're a yoga ashram and largely connected to India and their practice?
Because, pardon me if I say this, but I have never met in the United States either an Indian or an American Ayurvedic practitioner that I was able to trust with my own health.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not going to trust somebody with my health, why am I going to trust anybody with my loved one's health?
Is that a fault of the system of medicine, you think?
I think Ayurveda was a wonderful system.
Mm-hmm.
You have to also appreciate, Heather, that climate, the Chinese do appreciate, that climate plays a profound role in the structure of an individual person. Each of us lives in some adaptation with our environment, which is part of that is the climate.
Mm-hmm.
And the climate in India, the herbs that grow in India, the sort of culture of India, all makes India a very unique place, and the differences between here and India make Ayurveda less appropriate and effective for many Americans.
Than Chinese medicine?
Chinese medicine is, more energetic. Ayurvedic medicine is, for the most part, herbal based.
Mm.
Chinese have herbs too,
Mm-hmm.
and that plays a big role in their program. The Indians have quite a lot of herbs going on, but by now, there's so many problems in India. I mean, the Indians basically never, the people who really had the Ayurvedic knowledge never really taught anybody else. They kept it in their family.
Mm.
And that kept their family, superior in that area. I think the great problem of India in the world today and particularly Hinduism, is that the Indians always thought spirituality was for the highly cultured, and and being highly cultured for the most part meant you had to be rich. And so the Indians have never made any effort to educate the poor people about any of the Indian religious traditions, which opened the door for, Islam and Christianity and, and even earlier on Buddhism to come in and, play a major role in the cultural differentiation of India. Now, particularly post-World War II, the emergence of allopathic medicine had a huge impact on India.
And China.
And China, but I think more so in India, and I think more so in India because they were ruled by the British.
Mm-hmm.
And, today, most of the Ayurvedic medical schools in India are for-profit institutions. We all know about for-profit educational institutions.
Well, and I really...
They're slightly problematic.
And it really sounds like, just like with Chinese medicine, we've luckily been able to grasp on to some of the classical practices, and that's reemerging. It almost doesn't exist in China, but it is coming back. But in India, it sounds like the classical medicine was lost, and now it's practiced.
My opinion is that it was lost, and that what's practiced is a complete delusion, if not a perversion. And I think there's the additional complication that Indian Ayurvedic practitioners see Westerners not as people they really need to train, but rather as people that they really need to milk for money.
But yoga, somewhat connected to Ayurveda but separate, has survived in a way that we incorporate that into our practice.
I mean, we're influenced by Krishnamacharya and Desikachar primarily in India, and they were the most important influence in India in yoga in the last couple of 100 years. You know, Patabi Joyce, Iyengar, you know, everybody in South India, you know, studied with Krishnamacharya. And so, yes, yoga has, you know, sort of enjoyed a resurgence through the very careful, the very disciplined work of Krishnamacharya and Desikachar, his son. And but you know, that's not entirely true. There's people in North India now who are teaching yoga seminars for 10,000 people in a weekend and making a fortune, and teaching them the most outrageous, stupid, dangerous, maybe injurious, kinds of movements. It's just ridiculous. So, Indians have created a lot of their own problems. The medicines that they make are not pure. That's one big problem with Ayurvedic medicine. Finding safe.
It's a challenge with Chinese medicine as well.
Finding safe herbs for Ayurvedic medicine is difficult. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I haven't really found anybody in Ayurveda that I trust. So, and I have to say this to you guys. Anytime I hear anybody start a conversation with Ayurveda by mentioning the terms Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, I know for a fact that person does not know their ass from their elbow.
Wow.
And in the discussion of Ayurveda, if the person who is your practitioner cannot explain to you what they're doing in a simple way that you can easily understand, then what's going on is they don't know what they're doing, and you should be elsewhere.
Wow, I could have a whole nother conversation, but with coming back to focusing on what to me is interesting is you've been a part of a community for over 40 years. You've had exposure to and studied with some phenomenal healers and all of these different modalities. Am I hearing you say the big theme is a good understanding of the anatomical, physiological, and making sure that the energetic and spiritual isn't combined? Some of these things have 1,000-year-old lineages. Some, like osteopathy, are
the interesting
only a
thing
few
too
decades.
Is osteopathy developed in the United States after 1865, after the Civil War.
It's a relatively new medicine.
But it's so interesting that I have found lots of evidence that osteopathy was the hidden secret inside Ayurvedic medicine. And I'll explain that to you one of these days.
I would love to hear that.
But what I'm saying is, first of all, your health resources are within you. They're not in any pill. Pills are dangerous, and you should avoid them unless you are forced to do otherwise. Diet and exercise are the most fundamentally important things you can do for your health. Food you eat should be your best and most fundamental medicine. As we age, moving our bodies is the most fundamentally important thing we need to do. So then, eating properly, moving our bodies and seeking out people who have the skills to help us access from within ourselves the healing resources that are present there, because this physical body is extraordinarily resilient. You know, accessing those healing resources will allow us to live vital lives very much longer than otherwise.
And I'm going to ask or hope that you'll agree and add that practices like Qigong, like meditation, are the things that allow, we separate them here in the West, but the mental component to get engaged to be able to access that part of our physical selves.
Absolutely.
Without that, what is medicine? And that is one of my biggest...
The whole purpose of yoga, from our perspective, is to create a bridge between our physical bodies and a meditative state. We teach yoga here as, the beginning part of meditation training. And, in classical Chinese medicine, Qigong is taught as the sort of bridge between the physical body and meditative state. So, sometimes, Taoist Tai Chi is taught in the same fashion. So there are numerous ways to connect your bodies and your minds in meditative state, and that's what I've devoted my life to. So you're not going to get me to tell you that I think it's like maybe something you might be interested in. I mean, I would say that that movement in combination with breath for the purpose of cultivating meditative awareness is the most amazing, delicious, beautiful thing anybody can do with their life.
I want for everybody out there to get engaged in holistic health, whether you're going to MDs, NDs, Chinese medicine practitioners, and approach it with some of the information we talked about today.
I think the real simple issue is health is within you. You have to find people who understand that health is within you, and they have to have the tools to support you in accessing your health resources.
And even if we do have chronic illnesses, disabilities, that health is still within us. Thank you for joining us, everybody. In good health, this is Heather and Swamiji on News from the Heart. We'll see you again.